Hello, everyone. And Babula and I are back with another episode of Astrology Now. And just a quick reminder as we kick off, just please remember if you enjoy this episode, please like it. Feel free to subscribe. Remember to tap the bell, share it around with your friends. And we would really appreciate that. So today we're talking about new moon partial solar eclipse in Scorpio, which is coming up, isn't it, Babula?
It sure is. Lots to say about that.
Yeah. I just wanted to, I wanted to say thank you very much for people who sent um, comments about the last one, about my little foray into my own explanation and of my understanding of astrology from a not quite a newbie, but someone who's learning from Babula every time we talk.
Well, you've been into it for years, really, haven't
I
you?
have, but I haven't actually focused on it.
Right.
Yeah, I haven't focused on it like we have been,
Yes. Well,
the last
you
couple.
have other hats that that you wear.
Yeah, so thank you everyone. Much appreciated for your comments. And do feel free to leave those comments on our under our video too. So and I just wanted to remind people too that while we're talking about this lunar cycle, that in the background of this new moon cycle is still the relentless, crushing, pounding, grinding energy of Pluto moving through Capricorn, dismantling so many things. Relentless. And I was thinking, I don't know a time in my life when I have been so relentlessly pushed to grow. Have you?
No, that's exactly right. It's all just concentrated, and relentless is the word. It doesn't let up.
Yep. Yeah. So it's a lot to process and to digest and
Mm.
spit out the bits that you don't want, like which is a lot. So
Yeah.
yeah. So there's a few things coming up with this very intense new moon with the partial solar eclipse. So why don't you kick us off, Babula, and let us know?
Okay. Okay. So, we've known for some time that October was going to be big. And of course, as we come to the end of October every year, we move into the Scorpio phase. That's always a fairly intense period, late October into November when the sun goes through Scorpio. But there's so many other things, big things moving through October and into November. And right about now is when it's really getting very strong. So it's like, day after day, there's one thing and then the next thing, and they're all quite significant things in themselves. We do sometimes have periods where things are in a bit of a lull and it feels like you can breathe out a bit, but this ain't one of them.
No, and they've been very short and small in
They have
those
been.
spaces.
They have
Mm.
been. The movement of planets in the last 3 years has been really major. And as you're saying, this relentless, focused, non-stop sense of pressure,
Mm.
incredible transformation and rapid, intense growth, not always welcome, but happening nonetheless. And welcome, I think, at a deep level, because actually that's really, in my opinion, why we came. That's really what we're here for. So, yes, it's great. I keep reminding myself,
This
you
is
know,
good. This is good.
this is really good. This is good for our growth. Um, well, growth, awakening, evolution, those truths, actually. I was going to
Yeah,
make light of it, but it's true. It's
yeah,
absolutely true.
yeah.
So, um, I want to start before we get into this new moon solar eclipse on the 25th. Is it preceding that on the 20th, the morning of the 23rd in Australia? Other parts of the world, it's on the 22nd. You'll see that online. Is something happening that's quite relevant, and that is it's a Venus star point. And I won't spend a lot of time on this, but it's when Venus and the sun come together in a conjunction. As that is, they're at the same degree, and they come together at 29 degrees of Libra. Now, this happens roughly every 9 months or so. And every time Venus and the Sun make a conjunction over bigger cycles of time, they do it at almost the same degree of the same sign. And that changes very, very slowly, goes back through each sign, and it forms over every 8 years what we call a 5-pointed star, or the Venus pentagram. And it's just an extraordinary cycle and pattern and rhythm that Venus, the goddess of love, the principle that's related to our values, our sense of love and self-worth, and what we love and who we love and how we love and do we love and can we love, and issues around beauty, which is connected with. There's so many things that I'm getting more and more insight into what love is related to in so many ways. It's even related to money. Because Venus is a money planet. She's the main money planet in the astrological system.
So that's what we value, isn't it?
Yeah, she rules Taurus, the money sign. What are we all, we spend our money on what we value, on what's important to us, that may not be of any interest to somebody else.
Yeah.
They value something different. And so they might earn their money, spend their money, priorities, completely different things, because they have a different set of values. Depends on what sign and house Venus is in your chart. So when Venus and the Sun come together and form one of these important star points, it hasn't occurred in Libra for about 150 years. It's been going back through Scorpio, and this one on the 23rd occurs at 29 degrees of Libra. So that indicates there's a shift, there's a change. And it's to do with the sign of Libra, which is ruled by Venus and associates very much with things around beauty, human relationship, which we can just say so glibly, but wow, is human relationship a big deal on planet Earth?
Sure is, yeah.
And themes of justice, and and balance and harmony and what's right and so on.
So is it just about human relationship, or can it be about our relationship with the planet?
Also,
or projects that we love and value, those sorts of.
Yes, it can also be that. It's largely human relationships, because Libra's an air sign, which relates to the human experience. But you're absolutely right. It's a relationship with life and the world we live in, and with, things and objects we love, and so on and so on. So
yeah, others, basically.
Yeah. So what's really, yes, exactly. So what's really fascinating is that this eclipse season that we're now moving into does have a Venusian theme, and it's particularly the solar eclipse, and it's preceded 2 days before by this important star point. And some years ago I did a lot of research and reading and so on about these Venus star points. We've known about the 5-pointed star in Venus for a long, long time. But a wonderful American astrologer called Ariel Gutman a few years ago really delved into it and did some fantastic art. Same colored glass. Strange things I had noticed. Wonderful work on this, and really developed the work and understanding of these Venus star points. Fantastic work. And it's, that's really starting to come through in astrology a lot more in recent years, which is wonderful. And she says that we all have Venus in our chart, and that's our relationship with love and how we love and sense of pleasure and beauty and all. But that the star, and we were all born on a particular star point. What was the star point that was occurring just prior to our birth? And that is more to do with our deeper internal sense of value. It's more of an inner thing.
Right.
So when a star point like this occurs, when the Sun and Venus come together, there's many things we can say about it, but there can be a shift in our own personal sense of what we really value. Like, what do I truly value? What is most important thing to me? And 29 degrees of Libra, 29 degrees is always a very potent degree. It's called the anaretic degree of any sign. In my experience and observation over the years, I have found these degrees are really intense. They're very critical. I think I'm experiencing it. There's a real shift in relationship dynamics, like quite strongly, and also around, what we truly deeply value.
Mm.
And why am I not focusing more on that? Why am I neglecting that or diminishing that in some way? Why am I not making that a priority in my life?
Yes, yeah. Well, yeah, for me, that would be time.
Yeah,
TikTok.
TikTok.
Because no one can give you another heartbeat or another breath. So, time is valuable
Yes, it is. That's right. Yes.
for me
Interest,
anyway.
interesting you say that, because on the same day, on the 23rd, Saturn, the Lord of Time, is stationary direct.
I know.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, that's why it's come up. It's like, whoa,
That's
what am I
right.
doing with my time?
Exactly. And we spend so much of our days, checking the clock, and checking what the time is, because we have things to do and schedules and places to be and meetings and appointments and so
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
So, Saturn's been retrograde for 5.5 months, as he does every year. So it's not uncommon. But now, just prior to this eclipse, on the same day as this important Venus star point, Saturn is stationary. So it's at a standstill while this Venus star point's at 29 of Libra. It's quite a potent, powerful day. And I mean, it's not just that day, it's all around that day too. And then later the same evening on the 23rd, now most people might not get this until after the 23rd, but that evening, because the Sun and Venus are conjunct at 29 degrees, that evening they're both going to move into Scorpio.
Oh, okay.
So that's a really strong day.
Isn't it though? Yes.
Yes, it's quite pivotal. And then on the 25th, 2 days later, we come to the solar eclipse, which is always a pivotal moment.
Yeah, and eclipses aren't as rare as what people think, are they? We have them quite often, a couple of times a year, don't we?
Yeah, every 6 months,
Yeah.
there's a pair or sometimes three eclipses.
Yeah.
Every single 6 months. So yes, a couple of times every single year.
And this one's happening. Oh, sorry, I was going to say this one's
Go on.
happening in the beginning of the sign too, isn't it? So it's
That's
even
right.
more powerful.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it's at 2 degrees of Scorpio. What's fascinating about this, and I will hold up the chart just to give everyone a bit of a visual, but on a new moon or a solar eclipse, the sun and the moon are conjunct. That is, they're at exactly the same degree. They are joined up 2 degrees. So is Venus. She'll be at 2 degrees as well, because remember, the sun and Venus are now traveling together. So they're at 29, then they went to 0 Scorpio, then 1. And on the day of the eclipse, so this is a Venus Scorpio eclipse, which is pretty fascinating. And so just, you can see that here. There's the moon, the sun, and Venus all here at 2 degrees. There's the south node, which always denotes that it's an eclipse. The south node or the north node will be aligned with the sun and the moon at any lunar or solar eclipse. So we'll talk about that as well.
And I see you've written there old stuff. So you're talking about old, but also karmic?
Yes. And there's 2 main reasons for that. One is that in Scorpio, that's what we do. We do dredging, we do purification, we clean out the pipes, we unblock the sewerage. It's graphic. We're detoxifying the body.
Yeah.
We're dealing with toxicity in all its manifestations.
Toxic thoughts.
Toxic thoughts.
Toxic relationships.
That's
toxic
right.
foods. Yeah.
That's right. Chemicals and all of these things. And so in that sense, Scorpio in many ways is about the purging of old, stuck, dead, toxic material. The language gets strong when we're in Scorpio zone, because it's a strong sign. It's a strong energy, and it's an energy that ain't messing around.
Yeah.
Very intense, very powerful. But also old stuff, because it's a south node eclipse. So Eclipses are always in alignment with the north and south node. This one, the sun, moon, and Venus, are in the area of the south node, which again is always about the past, old material.
So Scorpio is about secrets too, isn't it? So it's about digging up that stuff,
Yes,
right, and exposing it
exactly.
or dealing with it, facing it.
That's right. All the stuff buried in the basement. You know, the dead bodies rotting in the basement.
Yeah. The skeletons in the closet.
Yes, the demons. You know, I often say about Scorpio, when we reach Scorpio in our journey around the zodiac every year at this time of year, this is the sign, and anyone with significant Scorpio in their chart, they know this. That's the sign in which we meet our own demons and our own old unresolved stuff. And often it's hidden until it's time for it to be revealed and come to the surface.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's intense. The process is intense, and this one is happening in the midst of all the other intense things going on, and the intensity of people's lives these days, and so on. The presence of Venus is interesting. She can potentially, well, in reality, actually offer a blessing, actually. You know, Venus is regarded in astrology as a benefic. So it's interesting, these three lights. Venus is the brightest star in our sky. The sun is a light. The moon is a light, although she's dark at a new moon. These are three very illuminated energies, all deep in the underworld in Scorpio.
Oh God, I can feel the rats and the cockroaches scurrying.
Scurrying, get out of here. That's right. The light's coming.
Yeah.
So on one hand, it can feel like the light's gone out, and there might be a period during this eclipse and over this week when we might have moments and day when we feel like, oh God, the light's gone out and I'm just really down in a dark place, and I'm tired and I'm heavy and I'm depressed. It can feel like that. But it's also about taking that light down into the underworld and shining the light in there.
Yeah.
So it's strong stuff. I had a little look, because I often just like to check on if there are any interesting asteroids going on here. And because Venus is involved, I was very happy to see an asteroid called Amor, which means love, and Aphrodite.
Okay.
Aphrodite is the Greek name of Venus.
Yes, that's right.
So that kind of adds a bit of extra emphasis, I think, to that love energy. So could be like, you know, getting clear and really honing in on our true heart's desire and what love means. I'm at someone's recommendation who was blown away by a particular book about money that has a completely different take on our relationship with money. And I'm just in the first chapter, and I'm going, oh, this is different. This is, and it's an energy. I'll share that with you later, and we can share that information with people if they want to know it. But Venus is important with money, so is Scorpio, and of course it's opposite sign of Taurus.
Now you got me thinking about Scorpio, because I'm thinking about the occult as well. You know, how does that fit in, do you think, like with that aspect?
Yeah, absolutely it does. Because the word occult, in my understanding, means what's hidden.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, secret knowledge.
Yes, coming to the surface.
Yes, which can be used for good. You know, there is, I'm going to be very general here. We could say there's white occult knowledge, white magic, and then there's black, dark occult knowledge and black magic. That's all in Scorpio.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely it is. So,
well, I'm wearing black and white occult colors today.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, even the word black is complex, because there's, you know, black and dark is also a beautiful thing, but it also is where evil hides.
Mm.
So, you know, it's complex. There's different ways of looking at these things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a strong eclipse, and it's fascinating to me that, you know, every time when we approach the Scorpio season, I'm always aware of it coming, and when I'm in it, it's like, okay, here we go, down in. And this one begins on this Venus star point and with a solar eclipse. Wow, what an entry into this Scorpio season.
And I'm thinking too, going into the Halloween season as well, because
Yes.
you know, I'm thinking about the occult, the idea, the whole thing about Halloween. Well, not the whole thing. It didn't start like this, but things were added over
Right.
history, which now include, you know, that the veil thins, and you know, spirits of the dead can be around us more easily. Those sorts of things.
That's right.
Mm.
That's right. And that's very Scorpio too, isn't it?
Yeah, sort of leading into that. We're sort of here leading into that season.
Yes. And because this is the sign of death, both literal, you know, the death of the body, the end of a life, and it's also death as a metaphor, you know, death and endings of relationships, a stage of life, a certain way of thinking, of understanding something. You know, the snake sheds its skin. We're shedding, we're releasing, we're purging. Of course, it's also.
No, I was just going to say, which is the first stage of transformation and rebirth, isn't it?
Exactly. Exactly. So there's you know, as you were talking earlier about Pluto, you know, you brought Pluto in. Well, he's the ruler of Scorpio. So there's tremendous disintegration and destruction and dismantling going on, and it's painful and hard and intense and difficult.
Yeah.
But it's a sort of you know, a plant has to die and wither and rot down into the soil, doesn't it?
Yes, to be compost for the seeds that it's dropped.
Exactly.
To grow something new. Yeah.
Exactly. And the butterfly has to, you know, weave that cocoon around itself and disappear into the darkness, turn to goo, turn to mush, just everything gets broken down and emerges a butterfly. So these metaphors are very apt. There's so many in Scorpio, these transformational, the phoenix rising out of the ashes. So we're in the fire, we're in the cocoon, we're in the goo, we're in the dismantling.
Yeah. And we'll see what comes out the other side.
Exactly.
Which I'm actually really curious about, you know. I mean, it's going to take a while.
Yeah.
But I'm just really curious.
Me too.
I'd love to speed up time without getting older to see.
I know, and get a peek, you know, on the other
Yeah.
side of all this. Exactly.
Yeah.
So as you were talking before, I was thinking, it's like images of getting out in the garden and, you know, getting bags of horse manure and digging it into the soil, and you know, it's that kind of thing. Yeah. So it is intense and it's strong, but that presence of Venus is so interesting. I think for some people it could also, because eclipses aren't just for a day or two. Eclipses set the tone, like a new moon does every month for the month ahead. Eclipses set the tone for the 6 months ahead.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's you know, for some people this could be a really important, deeply transformational time in their own personal relationships. For some, it could be a new relationship forms in a very deep and profound way. Some, it'll be the end of relationships.
Yeah.
You know, end of the road.
Yeah.
It comes to a crisis point and can't go on past that.
Yeah, fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah. So, you know, these eclipses are always really potent, pivotal crossroads, and it's like, yeah, we're not going back that way. This is now, something's going to change here.
So that energy will perpetuate till April.
Yeah. Yeah. So so that's the basic chart of the new moon. And of course, opposite, so here we've got the whole new moon eclipse energy in the south node, and opposite we've got our friend Uranus still doing his thing over here in Taurus, conjunct the north node in Taurus, which is all about, you know, the revolution and the change and the creation of the new. You know, many people call it the new earth, the new paradigm. Paradigms are basically, you know, systems of thought that become very established, and Uranus is doing a pretty good job of cracking all these things open and changing things up. So there'll be changes. There'll be changes around money and finance. Taurus, Venus are involved in this. That's already going on. There could be some really major events happening in the world that seem to come out of nowhere, but of course they're not really coming out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Showing up now.
Yeah.
So things happen. I mean, look what happened in the UK. You know, the PM who'd only been in office, what, 40 days or something?
Yes. Yeah. Yep. And resigned.
Who's that? Who will be next? So yeah, these are the kinds of things that tend to happen around eclipses. Okay, so then on the 20, and of course Jupiter during this eclipse and currently is retrograde at 0 degrees of Aries. It is heading back into Pisces, which it will do on the 28th. So on the 28th, it'll be at 29 Pisces, and it only gets back to about 28, and then it will come through and go back into Aries again later in the year.
Okay.
Right at the end of the year, around the solstice.
Yeah, I was wondering about, you know, how Jupiter in Pisces, or moving towards that, is, you know, causing all this wet weather that we're at least getting in Australia.
It's certainly, astrologically speaking, reflecting it.
Yes.
I've been thinking about that a lot. And Jupiter in Pisces certainly can indicate a lot of water, but it's interesting that these heavy rain events aren't happening all around the world.
No.
We're certainly getting it.
Yes.
And whether there are certain forces that make use of prevailing conditions to really exacerbate it and exaggerate it and make it even more powerful and extreme.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they're the thoughts I've been having about that, because astrologically, absolutely, you know, Jupiter, lots of Pisces, water.
Yeah. Yeah.
Down to just basic concepts, you know.
Yeah.
It'll be good when it gets out of Pisces from that point of view, which it will by the end of the year. Hopefully things, you know, Aries is a hot fire sign. So I'm hoping we'll get a bit of warm weather before summer's over.
Well, there's always other perspectives about these situations, aren't there? Because I always, and I know most astrologers do, hold Jupiter as a benefic planet.
Yes.
And even, unfortunately, even though people are getting caught in floods and their homes are getting wrecked, in the bigger picture overview, all our dams are full.
That's right.
And Australia has struggled with droughts many times.
That's right.
You know, and I'm saying this with the most deepest respect for people who have lost their homes.
Yes.
But, you know, the bigger picture, which Jupiter is, it's about our dams are full, and that, we know that lasts for at least 10 years when they are.
Yes.
But yeah, so there's always different ways of looking at things, aren't there?
Yes, and the water table will be rising. The Murray-Darling, which has been nearly just about dying, is going to get a really good flow and fill, and
the plant life is just booming.
Yes,
you know,
in the country for sure. On the coastal areas, you know, there's a lot of destruction going on. But absolutely, I agree. It will bring, and spiritually, Jupiter in Pisces is fantastic. It can really open us spiritually and shift our priorities to that dimension, you know. And bigger picture, it doesn't get much bigger than Jupiter in Pisces.
No, yeah, that's right.
That underlying understanding of oneness, you know, at the heart of everything. So that leads us to October the 30th. So as we depart October, Mercury will go into Scorpio. where Venus and the Sun already will be. But the other big thing that happens is that Mars is stationary and begins his retrograde phase. So he's, even now, Mars is moving very, very slowly. He's slowing right down, appearing to, anyway, in the sky, slowing right down. So I did a webinar last week and I showed a slide. It's a beautiful thing of, any planet that goes retrograde, it's going through the sky and then it appears to loop back like that. It loops back over the same territory it's been, and then it turns direct again and comes back through. So it's literally covering a certain distance of the sky 3 times. It goes forward, back, and forward. So Mars does that. Well, Mars is the masculine warrior principle of action, decision-making, conflict, aggression, war, anger, but it's also about our will and our capacity to stand up for ourselves and be energized and dynamic. So in Gemini, we've spoken of this already. Lots of mental activity.
Yeah. And I think, I was thinking about new moon in Scorpio and Mars in Gemini, and the 2 words that came to me were stinging words.
Yes.
Stinging words. And I just read an article this morning about the New South Wales MP Tanya Mihaluk or something. I don't know how to pronounce her name, but how she resigned from the Labor Party, declaring it's not ready to govern and hasn't cleaned up its act after historical corrupt conduct. And I thought, ooh, stinging words.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot like really sharp words and fighting words and a lot of argy-bargy in the public space. I think a lot more information is going to be surfacing as more people are kind of getting into the fight, so to speak.
Yeah. And I think we're going to be like overwhelmed with information once again.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that Martian energy is going to add an extra wallop.
Yeah. Definitely. And Gemini governs siblings, relationships with brothers and sisters, both blood brothers and sisters, and also people in our lives that we regard as sisters, brothers and sisters, but mainly it's our actual siblings that can have, can stir issues up. There might be arguments, heated discussions, or just sometimes it's even just lots of contact and activity. There might just be a lot going on.
Yeah.
Family with siblings. It doesn't have to always be Mars aggressive. It can be just lots is happening.
And what was I going to say? Gemini, not Gemini. I'm thinking about Mercury actually, but let's just put that aside for the moment.
Okay. Well, you bring up Mercury. What's interesting, while all this time that Mars is in Gemini, there's going to be 2 Mercury retrogrades.
Oh, okay.
So we've just come out of one, and there'll be another one at the end of the year while he's in the retrograde phase.
Yeah.
So Mercury rules Gemini. There's Mercury retrograde, Mars retrograde in Gemini.
Yeah, and Mercury's the messenger from the underworld, isn't it? It's a psychopomp.
Yes. Yes, that's right. So, if anyone's interested, I did a 3-hour webinar all about Mars retrograde in Gemini. So there's lots of information, as you'd expect with Mars in Gemini.
Yep, and they can purchase that from you?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I just covered all the different themes and issues associated with Gemini. It includes things like, the media, all forms of communication and our thinking, even in the body. And this was something I did kind of emphasize a bit to people. Even in the body, Gemini medically is our arms, hands, and fingers, as well, of course, as our lungs and our breath. So these are really important things, like just to take care when you're chopping vegetables, because Mars is sharp instruments.
Oh, yes.
And, our hands are busy, chop, 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 and we're talking away, having an animated conversation with someone in the kitchen. Mars is in Gemini. Slice off the top of our finger. So there can be a lot of mental energy and agitation even. So staying grounded and just slowing down, driving, chopping things, cutting things up with scissors, you know, anything like that, because Gemini's also got to do with traffic and so on. So we're going to have to take some deep breaths, because when Mars is retrograde, we often get frustrated and a bit antsy. Particularly in Gemini, I can get really irritated and cranky. And so, you know, we have to remember to breathe and stop and calm ourselves down and take a walk, go outside, you know, get grounded, because it can get quite agitating.
Yeah. Yeah. So strain.
It can be, absolutely.
Yeah.
And, you know, verbal conflicts with males, this kind of thing. So just know that, everyone, that can happen. But I'm already seeing in the public space, through various forms of media, main and not main, there is a lot going on. It's coming through thick and fast. And there's a lot of, you know, verbal battles going on and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
So yeah, there'll be a lot more to come. So and so Mars goes retrograde in Gemini on the day that Mercury changes sign and goes into Scorpio.
Okay.
Right, right. All right. Then on the 6th and 7th of November, Venus, now in Scorpio, starts to align with Uranus and Saturn, which have been sitting in this tight square for the last 2 years. So Venus will come through and trigger that from Scorpio. And then a couple of days later, the Sun and Mercury will do the same. So, you know, while these planets go through the middle section of Scorpio, they're going to make oppositions to Uranus in Taurus and squares to Saturn in Aquarius. So that's a lot of astrological mumbo jumbo.
Yeah. Let's make it simple for those who are
yeah,
not quite with that.
that's right. But it's what it is. It's highlighting and sort of activating that Saturn-Uranus square once again, because these slow-moving outer planets, which can hold a pattern for a year or 2 or 3, because they're not moving so fast.
Yeah.
Every now and then, the faster-moving inner planets will come through and hit that pattern that's kind of holding. It's not holding rigidly; they're moving, but slowly, and they act as triggers. Right? And that Saturn-Uranus square, this is all happening in the fixed signs, has got a lot to do with the tension between the old forces of control and the new impulse of change and revolution and awakening of consciousness. So there's been this, you know, strong tension being held there. And these faster moving planets, Venus and then the Sun and Mercury, come through, and over those few days that week, they will activate and trigger that square. So that's just adding to the powerful energies that are playing out during this period, this, you know, like this last week and the first 2 weeks of November. So is that helpful? How I just described that?
Yeah, I guess you know, people would be sort of wondering, you know, how that would play out in the public space, or how on the world stage, or possibilities to it, I suppose. Yeah.
Sure. Well, I think because those faster moving inner planets, Venus, Sun, and Mercury, are going through Scorpio, I think that can really trigger more exposure, more revealing of secrets. Remember we were saying earlier that the Sun and Venus particularly is shining a light.
Yes. Yeah.
And particularly in that opposition to Uranus. And at the same time, then the forces of control want to kind of come in and bring in an opposing point of view and try to tighten the noose, so to speak. So
yeah.
So it's quite tense in many ways, but for individuals, and as I'm saying these things, we're talking both about the world stage and the collective story, which we're all in.
Yeah.
It's impacting us all, but we all have our own personal story.
Yeah.
So in our own lives as well, if we've got planets around those points, we're going to be experiencing that in our personal relationships, perhaps issues to do with finance, and our value system. I think, we come back to what we started with. I think this is, I'm seeing it. That's going on for me, like a real sifting of what are my actual priorities, and do I want to just keep doing things just the same old way because that's what I do and there might be some practical reason for it, or is that really what I want to still be doing?
Yeah. I'm going through the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, just thinking, do I really want to keep doing what I'm doing? Or do I want to do something else? Or do I just want to stop and have a break?
Yes.
Complete break for a while, or go on a sabbatical, or
Yes, or a
something
holiday
like,
on a tropical island would be nice.
yeah, or just take time out and just be a regular person, which I am, but just have a regular life, which isn't so regulated.
Right.
Yes, yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah. No, it's been such a strong time these last few years, and I what I've found is what's helped me is having to, like, it really keeps bringing me back to now, to today, dealing with today, dealing with now with what's right in front of me. Because the big picture is pretty full on. For me, I like to understand the big picture and know it, but keep trying to keep coming back here to now.
yeah. But also with that intensity, because we're moving up to a time from, I think, March for about 3 months, or maybe a bit later. I'm not sure. I've forgotten now. But where Pluto actually tips over into Aquarius, aren't we? For a little while, to give us a taste of what's going to come eventually.
That's right.
Before it goes backwards and goes back. And from now until then, I think things are just going to get more intense before it does that.
That's
Reach
right.
that tipping point.
That's right. It's very intense, and even in the world, the United States is still going through its Pluto return.
Yeah.
And that's just massive, absolutely massive. Like this is the most critical time in that country's history since it began. This is it.
Yeah.
It's that important. And of course that has an impact on everything around the planet. Absolutely. Whether we like it or not, that's the reality of it. So yeah, it is very big. And so in this Scorpio period, we are doing a lot of shedding. The snake is shedding its skin in order for it to grow to the next phase.
Yeah.
So that always happens during the Scorpio time. There can be days when we feel like we're in a quagmire and wading through thick treacle. It's because, and I notice this with a lot of Scorpios, they often need a lot of time to themselves because it's like they're literally pulled into the deep. They're in the deep, and they don't always have a lot of energy for out there.
Yes.
And so that's, I think, an important message for us all during this period now, is to allow ourselves to take time out to just drop into the deep. Now, spiritually, in meditation, that can be extraordinary and amazing, to take time out to just drop and be, and close the door, close the curtains, and just rest in the dark. Very healing and very transformative.
Well, it's like a hibernation period, isn't it?
Hibernation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go into the cave, and just hibernate. This is the hibernation. That's a great word for it.
And when bears hibernate, they eat a lot of food before they go into hibernation. So there's been this, I sort of see what's been going on the planet with this whole situation is like we've been guzzling down resources for, which it's not sustainable. Yeah. And then the pandemic happened, and then the restrictions kicked in, and then a lot of that couldn't happen for quite a while. And now then we went into this hibernating phase. But when bears come out of hibernation, they don't always start guzzling down food again. In fact, I was reading that they don't eat anything much for a while. because
Ah,
their body has to get used to it again, you see.
yes.
So don't drink as much either. So I'm just sort of seeing that's a bit how we're headed to. We sort of reflect that whole process, is that, we've made decisions through this whole transformational time where we're choosing not to guzzle down a whole lot of stuff now, because we've gone through this reevaluation process,
Yes,
and we've
exactly.
decided, well, do I really want that? Do I really need it? And is it good for me to want that or need it? Like that sort of thing. So it's a real process, and it's been a shake-up. But I think on the other side, it's we're going to be a more thoughtful and conscious society.
We are on the other side of this. I completely agree.
The
Yeah,
people at the grassroots level I'm talking about.
that's right.
Yeah.
And all those new communities and so on that are already beginning to form and take shape as they're
Mm.
looking forward,
Mm.
go through this great, dismantling and dying process.
Yeah. And because we're
Mm.
making different choices, that
Mm-hmm.
changes the market, which changes the monetary system, and blah, 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 blah. It keeps on building on.
Yes. Well, some people watching this might be aware of what happened very recently with PayPal and an announcement they made, which was shocking, about how they were going to, fine people for saying, going to fine them $2,500 if they dared to openly speak disinformation.
Mm.
That is outrageous. And the backlash was instant and hard and
Yeah.
fast. And they backtracked for now.
Yeah.
Everyone shut down their PayPal accounts.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of thing that's going on. That's right.
Yeah. And that's that awakening to our personal power and
That's right.
collective people power.
That's right. And awakening to the reality of how these systems do operate.
Mm.
And
Mm.
it's coming out.
Yeah. Yeah.
The shock when
Fascinating.
that, yeah, it is. So, and they've probably been behaving badly behind the scenes for a long time. And then it just came out like that.
Yeah.
Mm. So in the midst, so then in November, in the midst of the Sun, Mercury, and Venus making these squares and oppositions to Saturn and Uranus that I was speaking about before, comes the full moon part of this lunar cycle on the 8th of November, in the middle of Scorpio, the sun and the moon. So the sun will be at 16 degrees of Scorpio and the moon will be at 16 degrees of Taurus, conjunct Uranus.
Mm.
So I just wanted to say something at the moment about these eclipses in Scorpio and Taurus. They started in December. So every 18 months, the north and south node change signs. And in December, by December of last year, they'd moved into Scorpio and Taurus. I think it happened, can't remember, around the middle of the year, I think. So the first eclipse in those signs started in December. All 4 eclipses of 2022 sit across that Scorpio-Taurus axis.
Mm.
Next year, 2 will be on the same axis, and the other 2 will have shifted into Libra, Aries. So this year has been particularly strong with all these eclipses in Scorpio and Taurus, like really very powerful. And a number of them have been in alignment with the planet Uranus, the planet of awakening, of shocks, of change, sudden change, radical shifts of consciousness and so on. So it's been pretty cataclysmic and continues to be so.
Yeah.
In many ways. And, when Uranus is involved, there's always surprises and sudden unexpected events and so on. And look, I just want to touch on something that will, I think, help people, is that on the 16th of November, Venus leaves Scorpio, goes into Sag. The next day, Mercury goes into Sagittarius. And around about the 21st, the sun will go into Sag. So we always come out of the Scorpio period, which this year just happens to be particularly potent. Having been through this passage of transformation, and we emerge, like the phoenix, like the butterfly out of the cocoon, we come out and we go, oh, and we it's like we literally climb out of the underworld,
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
into the light of day and the horizon, and everything expands in a new way because of that deeper passage we went through initially. I've always been so intrigued and fascinated and loved that Scorpio to Sagittarius transition.
Yeah, and I think I see it as like being a Sagittarian myself, who used to love a smorgasbord.
Right, of course.
It's all about the harvest as well. So, but it's not just the crop harvest; it's about harvesting what you've just been through in that transformational process.
That's right.
Enjoying the harvest of that.
That's right. And what you're sort of left with, what gems, because Scorpio, Plutos in Greek, as I understand it, means wealth. So it's also got a lot to do with how we mine the gems, deep under the earth. So we come out of Scorpio, hopefully, if we've been willing to do that work in there, with some real gems, which we can then take into Sagittarius and expand and move forward, So it's a fantastic thing, but it can get intense. It can get a bit heavy going at times. We need a lot more rest, I find, to not overdo it and overschedule ourselves is often what I tend to do at this time of year. I just try and pull back on scheduling and taking on too much.
Yeah.
Too much.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You've only got so much energy every day.
Yeah. A bit of cave work is called for. And it's very shamanic.
Pisces.
Yeah, that's right. And speaking to you who does these wonderful shamanic journeys, it's a very shamanic process. Actually.
Yeah, it certainly is. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
You can go on a journey and receive information that's helpful, and but going down into these other worlds, other realms, lower worlds, middle worlds, upper worlds, all sorts of worlds. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And it's also a time, just to finish, it's a time when every year quite a lot of souls tend to depart this world. I've never done an astrological survey of, you need, big numbers, but I have just observed, and it makes sense. It's often a time, has come when the appointed time has come, and souls tend to depart during this process of Scorpio.
Yeah, going on to something else.
Yes, and then transcend into another realm. That's right.
Fascinating.
So yes,
get a lot to chew on.
A lot to chew on.
Yeah. Well, and we will.
We do this every year. It's particularly long at the moment, but yes.
Yeah. Oh, great. Well, thank you for that. That's been fascinating, and I'm fascinated by how the planetary movements, affect us personally, and that public space, as you say, the world stage, and how that moves things around. It's almost like a chessboard in a way. That's the pieces are responding to some higher influence that's over it, hovering over the chessboard, and just sort of moving it around, a bit like marionettes almost.
Yes, it is. It's extraordinary. It really, and we're all so connected to all of that we're just responding consciously or unconsciously. Sometimes I like to really pay attention. I'll take a bit of time out to just pay attention to what I'm experiencing, and some significant astrological thing is happening.
Yeah.
What does this really feel like? What am I noticing and experiencing with this?
Well, thank you once again.
My pleasure.
For sharing your knowledge and your wisdom with us. And again, just a quick reminder, if you enjoyed this episode, please like it, subscribe if you want to, share it with friends, and if you want to leave a comment, we would love to hear from you, and we look forward to seeing you again next time. So bye for now.
Bye, everyone.